And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Sunday, January 19th. I am Josh Engleman, here to break down a 5-game NBA slate on the DraftKings side for today. Coming off of, I'm wearing the wrong colors right now. This is awfully blue today, but it wasn't a blue day yesterday. It was a Commanders day. My boys picking up a dub. And now we wait to see what happens today. Do we end up getting birds and skins? One can only hope. One can only hope. So hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Hope everybody's having a good weekend so far. You guys get 2 football games today. You get this 5-game main slate on the DraftKings side. 2 7 o'clock starts. 3 9 o'clock starts. So kind of the not most fun sitch ever. There's a 3 o'clock game today, Spurs and Heat. There's also a 6 o'clock Nuggets Magic game. Not going to be touching on those here. Just going to hit this DraftKings main for today, because I know we're going to have a relatively thin herd of people here. So let's get it done, shall we? I think we shall. We're going to start it off. First one up. The Philadelphia 76ers are 10.5-point underdogs in Milwaukee, 223 total. Now, lots of problems here. Lots of problems, because it all comes down to the assumptions of who is playing for the Philadelphia 76ers. And because they're on a back-to-back, I don't know. Now, I can say this much. I projected Paul George in for this game. And I have the line at Philly, 6.5-point dogs. The market says 10.5. Seems to me the expectation is that Paul George will not be playing in this game. However, I have him in for right now. Ownership is leaning towards the Paul George. Well, it's kind of doing both, because depending on who's in and who's out here, if we get Paul George, if we get Yabusele, if we get Drummond, everything is going to look a lot different. And we have no idea of how to plan this out, with this being a back-to-back spot for Philly. If Paul George and Yabu don't play, then Ricky Council IV is going to be a pretty big value option. Eric Gordon will be rosterable on a 5-game slate. Andre Drummond at 5K, you'll think about it. They're short on bigs. Boma would look okay at that point. You know, Maxey and Oubre will be guys that you can get to. This is a completely up in the air spot. If Paul George and Yabusele are in, then I kind of look at the starting 5 pretty similarly. I think they're all 10% dudes. Whether that's Maxey, George, Oubre, Yabu, Eric Gordon. But if Paul George is out again and we're going to get any sort of real minutes to Ricky Council, he's small forward, power forward eligible, flat 3K. That's just going to be a really good play today. And depending on how the rest of this shakes out, we might be able to find some value elsewhere. $3,400 Justin Edwards, perhaps. But it's basically impossible to talk about Philly right now. We have no concept of who is going to be available. We're going to need that news, which we will absolutely get before 7, considering this is the first game of the night. But I don't really see much of a priority here for Philly if Paul George ends up in. I actually think Paul George might be the best option on Philly if he ends up in. 8K shooting guard, small forward. But ownership is tough to pin down here for these Sixers, just because we don't know who's going to play. I mean, Flatman Ricky Council feels like a spot. Sure does. Now, on the opposite side, you got the Milwaukee Bucks, and Giannis is probable. Marshawn Beauchamp is probable. Chris Middleton is probable. But we do have a Q tag on AJ Green and Andre Jackson. And they sort of matter, but sort of don't. The guy that we got to talk about here, though, is very clearly Giannis. He's 20% owned. He's 11,600. He's power forward center eligible. I have him 22% optimal, 45% chance of 62 fantasy points against a Philly team that has really no mechanism to slow him down. Yeah, I'd like to get a bit of Giannis. I'm not shocked. I'm honestly a little surprised that he's not owned more, but we will likely have Shea on this slate. And then the big problem for everything is the Sacramento Kings are at home facing the Wizards, and that one looks pretty damn good. But I want to get to Giannis. I don't think we'll have any shortage of ways to pay up for him. But the more interesting piece to me here, I think Damian Lillard's pretty sizably underowned. 8,500 point guard only, not a difficult matchup at all. They don't really have that kind of defense on the opposite side for Philly. He's 7% owned right now. I had him 16% optimal. I like the idea of getting to Dame if he continues to maintain that low ownership. Now we're seeing like Portis get to 10 to 12%. We're getting Middleton at 12%. Brook Lopez is right at the 10% number. Gary Trent's basically unowned, if you want a different piece of value, but Giannis is clearly the pay up that you want. But Damian Lillard is underrepresented. I would happily have 10% of Lopez, Middleton, Trent, or Bobby Portis. Now, we will want to pay attention to those Q tags. On the off chance that AJ Green and Andre Jackson are both out, we'll see increased minutes to Ryan Rollins, to Pat Connaughton, probably to Gary Trent at that point. That'll make him pull a little bit more ownership. If it's just one of them, it probably doesn't matter that much. Jackson starts and plays 16 minutes a night. It's really unappealing. AJ Green plays in that 20 to 24 range, but both of those guys are pretty terrible per minute options. So as I look at Milwaukee, get yourself Giannis, Dame as a pivot, and honest, maybe even more than a pivot. If he really was 7% owned, I'd want 20 plus. That's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Dame is my number one leverage play. Let me look at it quick. Could be Jabari Walker. Dame's third. And the only reason that it's not one, we'll get into for Portland, which is a team on a back-to-back and complicated. There's a lot to like here for Milwaukee. I like the Milwaukee side a lot more than I like the Philly side, that's for sure. Higher optimal rates, higher boom, less questions, but Philly could look good depending on how it all breaks. Now, game 2 is disgusting. It's the Brooklyn Nets 17.5 point underdogs in Oklahoma City. 216 total. Brooklyn has basically the same thing they always have. All that big crop of dudes that have been out for weeks are out. Cam Johnson, questionable once again. He got back for one game and then went right back to the Q tag list. There's no ownership coming into Brooklyn. 2% to Ben Simmons, 2% to D'Angelo Russell, 1% apiece to Zaire and Day'Ron Sharp. And that's exactly how I have it. Like, I got the most optimal I got of anybody for Brooklyn is 5% to Ben Simmons. I only got one guy over 10% boom. And it's a 5-game slate. I don't think I've seen that yet this year. But we all know why it's happening. It's not even a good pace spot. It's a pace down spot. They're more than 2 touchdown underdogs against arguably the best defense in the league. Whether Shea plays or not, they're still going to beat the pants off of Brooklyn. Don't roster the Nets. There's nothing appealing here. They don't even have good salaries any longer. Everybody is above 3,900 at this point, except for Iwoma. And he's at 39 on the dot. How do you roster these guys? They're just a sea of mid-tier dudes that aren't even really mid-tier dudes. Oklahoma City, on the other hand. Now, this is a team we can get to. Now, we don't know the status of Shea. He is questionable. I assume he plays, but if you ever wanted to get him a little bit of extra rest, this is the time to do it. Although every game that he misses, it does affect like MVP stuff in the long run. The other interesting part is OKC doesn't play again until Wednesday. They're off Monday and Tuesday. So if they sit Shea here, they basically get him a week off pretty easily. So, like, that's kind of appealing. Martin at 5K is criminal. I'm curious if you mean it's too high or too low, because it's too high, clearly. I just want to know which direction you're going. So anyway, assuming Shea plays 10,200, he's 15% owned. Should be 20. So I think Shea is underowned. Jalen Williams without the Y is 20% owned. Deserves it. Lou Dort is close to 20% owned. Deserves it. Cason Wallace is 15% owned. Deserves it. Jalen Williams with the Y, who got the center minutes 2 days after being aggressive chalk, he deserves 25% ownership. Isaiah Joe's getting around 10. Deserved. Caruso's getting like 15. Deserved. I want to get a bunch of OKC here. They have to play 240 minutes, and it's going to look good for a couple of these guys. For right now, this is my second favorite team. It's technically the team that I have the most optimal rate on, but I think Sacramento has the higher ceiling. But these guys look awesome. The disparity in ownership is crazy. 6% to Brooklyn, 126% to OKC. I want everybody in the Thunder. And like, I don't have Aaron Wiggins grading out all that well, but I don't think he's a straight no. I want every bit of OKC. But if I'm ranking these guys, Jalen Williams would be 1. You're getting him at center, flat 4K, nobody behind him, could play 30 minutes. You get Lou Dort, 20% optimal, 34% boom. He'd be second. Just functionally easier to get to. Price has come up $400. Then it would be Shea, Jalen Williams without the Y, Cason Wallace, and then I would go to the bench. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. But if Shea ends up out, everything I said is just turned up an extra notch. Because Jalen Williams, both Jalen Williams will look better. Dort looks better. Wallace looks better. Joe looks better. Caruso looks better. If we don't get Shea, we're getting all things Oklahoma City. And I will want every piece of it. The same way that I did Friday night, where it was absolutely the right move and didn't get anybody anywhere. You'll do it again today. If Shea is out, get all of Oklahoma City. Everybody will be good here. We have 2 real dumpster fire games. Brooklyn OKC and Washington Sacramento are 2 ridiculously awful games. But we do get Lakers Clippers today. The Lakers are 4-point dogs in Los Angeles. 214.5 total. This is the lowest total and slowest pace game on the slate. It's also the lowest own game by a mile. There is 60% ownership projected to the Lakers and the Clippers. That's less than Philly and Milwaukee individually. It's half of OKC. It's half of Chicago. 2/3 of Washington. 1/3 of Sacramento. It's under Portland as well. This game is under the individual, the Lakers and Clippers combined is under the individual ownership totals of everybody except for Brooklyn. So we've got the Lakers. First team up. Q-tag AD. Q-tag Jackson Hayes. Probable tag LeBron James. Now, it shouldn't be surprising to anybody here that if Anthony Davis doesn't play, we're probably getting something in the value department for the Lakers. Whether that ends up being Jackson Hayes or Koloko, something is going to look like a really good value if Anthony Davis doesn't play. Somebody's got to play center. But we don't know if Hayes plays because he's questionable too. But he's 3,700. If AD is out, Jackson Hayes is going to be pretty heavily owned. But right now, with everybody in, LeBron James is the highest owned guy at 10%. Now, I would argue that these Lakers are under-owned. I think LeBron is at 17% optimal, 34% chance of 53 fantasy points. I think he should be closer to 20. I think Max Christie should be 10. I think AD should be 15 to 20. And I could argue that Austin Reeves should be like 10. All I want is these under-owned Lakers. That's all I'm looking for. Give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, like if AD's out, obviously that's a big bump to Braun. That's going to be a bump to Reeves. Rui will look a little bit better at 4,900. Dorian Finney-Smith, now that he's back, will certainly work as a bit of a value option. He's 3,500 power forward center. If AD happens to be out, I think he'll look a little bit more interesting. I'm a little surprised to see the lack of ownership here. I think the Lakers side of this game looks a lot more appealing than the public is currently projecting. Now, on the Clippers side, that's a side I actually don't like. Now, we're projecting a decent chunk of ownership to Ivica Zubac. He's 7,200. But the problem here is we have no way to break this down. Q-tag Chris Dunn, Q-tag James Harden, Q-tag Norm Powell, Q-tag Zubac. The three best players on this team are all questionable. Well, sorry, three of the four best players on this team are questionable. Oddly enough, the one that isn't questionable today is Kawhi Leonard, who is 7,500, small forward, power forward eligible, and unplayable. So, if Norm Powell's the only one of those guys in, then yeah, he looks great. Same for Harden. Same for Zoo. Zoo's getting a little bit more ownership than I think he should. I definitely think the Clippers side is more correct than the Lakers side. The Lakers guys seem underrepresented. The Clippers might be. But as of right now, based on their Q tags, I have 116 minutes questionable in this game. That's 48% of the playing time. So we need to know whether Chris Dunn, James Harden, Norm Powell, or Zubac are playing. And obviously, depending on which one or others aren't in or out, we might be playing a lot of a $3,100 Mo Bamba. Or we're going to play zero, essentially, of a $3,200 Mo Bamba. I don't know what that's going to look like by 9 o'clock, but you want to give yourself some swap opportunities. The good part here is that because of Chicago and Portland being a 235 total in the fast game, Wizards and Sacramento being a hugely owned game, the news that we need for the Clippers and the Lakers we'll be able to fix before 9 o'clock with late swaps. And I think that'll be pretty helpful because you're going to have a ton, as of right now, there's 466% ownership. So more than half of the ownership is projected to the Bulls, Blazers, Wizards, and Kings. You're going to be able to swap off of this Clipper stuff, and you're not going to need this info before lock. But I mean, every one of these games, like the Philly-Milwaukee game, Philly is a total wild card. Brooklyn-OKC. We know we're going to get to OKC, but they're a bit of a wild card with Shea. Lakers, AD. Wild card. Clippers, the biggest wild card. And then we get to the two big games here. These are the ones that we're going to dig into a little bit more. But first, guys, you got to hit that like button if you're here. These Sunday shows, man, they're not the biggest crowds in the world. But I do this one because it's fun. I like being here anyway. But we got shows today. It's not like we're not doing content. It's just more of an NFL day than anything else. Which is a shame. It shouldn't be. Schedule for the rest of the day. It's going to look as follows. There's only one show left to do today. That's going to be NFL Live Before Lock, 2 p.m. EMAC, Bellman, breaking down your two games for today. That is where we stand on this Sunday. If you guys are looking for more content, you'll get exactly what you're looking for on the NFL side in a couple hours. But for now, we're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls, who are 5-point favorites in Portland. 235 total. As I mentioned, this is the fastest paced matchup on the slate. Chicago, a little up in the air. Lonzo is questionable. Javon Carter is doubtful, which shouldn't matter. Torrey Craig out. Talen Horton-Tucker questionable. Zach LaVine probable. Now we're getting a decent chunk of ownership here for Chicago. Getting about 15 into LaVine, which I completely agree with. 8,400. Shooting guard, small forward eligible. 32% chance of scoring 47 fantasy points. LaVine is a guy that I would happily get 15 to 20% of. Now, Kobe White is also showing up for 30% ownership. I assume this goes away, and he's not actually 30% owned, because he does not look any different than Josh Giddey or Zach LaVine. He's just over-owned here. So if he comes down to that like 20% range, that makes sense, because I have him 16% optimal, 32% chance of 38. I think Giddey looks great at 6,800. I honestly think that Josh Giddey's a bit under-owned at 9%. However, with Dosunmu's minutes coming back up, it starts to get a little sneakier. Jalen Smith is projected for some ownership right now, which I don't really see. That will go away completely. We're going to have enough value here at center that we're not going to take a run at a guy that's just sort of straight back up to Vooch. I think Vooch looks very reasonable at 8,300, about 10% owned. I think Lonzo is reasonable enough to get to 5 to 10% owned. Dosunmu still seems a little scary. I think you got to wait till we can get to those 30-minute games, and I don't want to downplay Jalen Smith. He's close to 10% optimal, 25% chance of 24 fantasy points. Like, it's not crazy to get to Jalen Smith. I just don't think 29% ownership is going to stick around, so I wouldn't get too married to that one. And I don't think the White ownership ends up looking like it does. But if I'm ranking Chicago, it would be LaVine, Giddey, White, Vooch, Jalen Smith. Now, the Portland side is a complete random wild card, but we're going to get something here, I think. So they're on a back-to-back. We do not have an injury report for Portland right now. Yesterday, DeAndre Ayton did not play. Donovan Clingan did not play. Denny Avdia did not play. But we did get Jeremy Grant back. So, it kind of depends on what's here. Muhammad says Banton. Depends. I don't think you play Delano Banton at all today, but it depends on who's in and who's out. If Denny doesn't play again today, then you could have that conversation. But if Denny's back and Ayton's back, then I think this looks a little different. Then I think we're looking at Jabari Walker, potentially. Do they go small at center with Grant behind Ayton? Because I'm not expecting Time Lord to play his third game in 4 days. Do we get Dwop Reith over Jabari Walker? There's going to be value here, but we have no idea who's actually going to be on the floor. But no matter who is, I do think Shaedon Sharp's worth 15 to 20% ownership. I think Anthony Simons is worth 15 to 20% ownership. This should remove Scoot from the starting lineup. And if Scoot's not starting, I feel better about those first two guys. I don't mind getting $5,200 Jeremy Grant today. Might be a little out of the realm of possibility, but that's a nice price. If Denny's back, you don't want to go there. If Ayton's in, Do you take the chance that he's going to play more than 24 minutes today? I do. Do you want to roll the dice on whoever the backup center is today? Is it Time Lord at 3,100 with power forward center eligibility? If it is, he played 20 minutes. Not hard to blow that one out of the water. Is it Jabari Walker? Is it Dwop Reith? We don't know because we don't have an injury report for this game. But we know that we're going to get to Portland no matter what. We just don't know who it is yet. Silent Assassin, do you think the Blazers will have Simons on the trade block? Because I don't see the fit with Scoot. I mean, everybody's on the trade block for the Blazers. But should we care about the fit with Scoot? I think that's a more interesting question. Why should we care about Scoot? Anthony Simons is 25 years old. Scoot's 21. Maybe you keep the guy that actually has been a talented offensive player and you get rid of Scoot. But it's probably pretty difficult to trade Scoot, given that his value couldn't really be any lower. It's kind of the problem for these Blazers guys. They're all not very good, and that's why the Blazers aren't very good. But every single player on the Portland Trailblazers is on the block. I'd say Donovan Clingan would probably be the least likely guy to go anywhere. Anybody can go. Anybody can go for Portland right now. Do you think Murray is going to drop more than 20? Chris Murray? Right now I have Chris Murray projected for 13 minutes. So, you know, I doubt it. But if Denny Avdia and DeAndre Ayton don't play and Jeremy Grant sits the back-to-back, who the hell knows? Jamal. Does he play today? Not on the slate. Don't care. Talking about a game I'm not talking about. Washington Wizards, final game. 9 p.m. start. Wizards on the road in Sacramento. 17-point dogs. 234 total. Oh, the Wiz, man. Here's the problem. We're going to be getting to the Washington Wizards today. Look at the ownership on the Wizards. And we don't even have anything to worry about here. Now, they're not on a back-to-back, but do you guys see the rotation from the Wizards yesterday? Listen to the minutes here. Listen to the minutes here. Bilal Coulibaly, 34. Jordan Poole, 36. Kyle Kuzma, 31. Bub Carrington, 30. Sarr, 30. Keyshawn George, 30. Corey Kispert, 30. Joval, 18. They ran an 8-man rotation as tight as they possibly could yesterday. Okay, that's one way to do it. If they're running an 8-man rotation that tight, then we're seeing 10% ownership to Joval, 13 to Kispert, 14 to Sarr, 20 to Keyshawn George, 10 to Kyle Kuzma, 15 to Bub Carrington. We only got 5 to Jordan Poole and 8 to Bilal Coulibaly. But those 8 guys that played yesterday are all essentially 10 to 20% owned. And I completely agree with it. Look at my optimal rates. Poole, 10. Coulibaly, 13. Bub Carrington, 14. Kuzma, 12. George, 17. Sarr, 11. Kispert, 18. Joval, 13. I want the whole damn team. This should not be an experience we want to have with the Washington Wizards. But the entire 8-man rotation from yesterday look awesome. Or at the very least, properly owned. Every one of those guys. Joval has the highest boom at 31%, which I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to know that he has the most variance. Listen to these booms. 24, 25, 24, 28, 28, 22, 28. We're getting to the Wizards today, guys. The Wizards, who I think are either the second or third best team today. Let's just do this. OKC, Washington, and Sacramento are the 3 best teams for the day. The consensus answer is Sacramento, and then you could split the other 2. I'm happy to call it all 3 of them. John C., did I do ayahuasca last night? No, why? Was I supposed to? I wish I did. But because I'm talking about the Wizards? I could see that. But it's Wizards season today. And I don't know how you dodge it. Like, Keyshawn George, is he a good per minute guy? No. He's played 30 and 31 minutes in their last 2 games, and he's 3,600. Small forward, power forward eligible. All these guys look good, man. All of them. I couldn't even rank them if I wanted to. But I will, just for you guys. Let's call it Kuzma, Sarr, George, Poole, Koulibaly, Kispert, Bub Carrington, Joval. But that could be in any order. Look, they've got... You would expect one Wizard to be in an optimal. You'd expect 2 of these guys to be in winning lineups if you needed it. They look fantastic. And yet, in a 5-man group, I'd argue Sacramento's even better. And they might look even better than that. Because Keon Ellis is questionable and Devin Carter is out. We might be able to free up even more value if Keon Ellis ends up out. But what we are doing, because Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, and De'Aaron Fox, these idiots play 36 minutes a night. And that's why we're getting 25% ownership to an $8,600 De'Aaron Fox, 25% ownership to a $7K DeMar DeRozan, 40% ownership to a $9,900 Domantas Sabonis, who I have projected for 14.5 rebounds. 25% ownership coming into Keegan Murray at 5,100. And then the big boy here, Malik Monk, 60% owned, 7,300 point guard, shooting guard. Now, do I think Monk will be 60? No, I expect it to come down. But he's the only guy in that starting lineup that has an MPE. And that price tag, not all that problematic. The minutes are here. The matchup is a dream. They have the highest implied total of any team on the slate, and it is not close. That is what being 17-point favorites at home does when you have the highest game total. So if you're trying to play today, the starting 5 for the Sacramento Kings, fantastic. Can't go wrong. At least one of them will be in an optimal. At least 2 of them are going to be good for you. But if Keon Ellis ends up out, I think we might have to take a little bit of a peek at either Trey Lyles or Kevin Huerter for some value. But this is the most appealing game on the slate, bar none, because the Wizards are dreadful. And Sacramento plays their starters a lot. And that kind of combination leads to massive scoring. So these guys are the guys we want here. Cap said, hey Josh, process question. How do you decide when and how much to cap exposures in The Sims? I don't do it at all. So that would be my answer. Not something that I care to do. Other people might tell you differently. These are all personal, operational questions, but I don't do it. Man, this last game looks tasty, guys. Tasty. I'll hit you guys with my 10 top plays right now before I record contenders. A lot of Sacramento on that list. De'Aaron Fox 1. Jalen Williams with a Y 2. Giannis 3. Domas 4. Keegan Murray 5. SGA 6. Contenders are looking good, boys. Contenders are looking good. I know we moved through that pretty quickly, but look, here's the deal. It's Sunday. We hit all the games. Nobody cares about the NBA today, unfortunately. Makes me sad. NBA is better than these 2 stupid NFL games. But You know, it's not the biggest NBA day in the world, which is kind of a bummer. It's not even kind of a bummer. It just is a bummer. Like, what does FanDuel have up top? 10K or something? David, yes. Yes. Yeah, 10K up top on FanDuel. Like, if these sites are just gonna tell us that they don't care about it, I'm still gonna be here and we're gonna break down games. And I'll have an update for contenders later this afternoon as well, because this isn't gonna be with 2 7 o'clock games and nothing else. I'll make sure we can get some updates out. But that's what we've got going on for today. We got the whole world caring about 2 NFL games. We got us caring about 5 NBA games. But I appreciate you guys being here. I'd love for you guys to sign up at Stokastic. Link in the description. You can get a month of our sims and all of our advanced data and access to our Discord for $0. If you sign up using that link, all you have to do is sign up through one of our affiliates, either a pick'em site or a sportsbook. And they're going to give you something getting in the door as well. And it's not some sort of outlandish deposit minimum. That should all be on their site. You could basically do this for like $25, I believe. Don't quote me on that. You can check it out for yourselves. Link in the description. Guys, enjoy your Sunday. I'm going to go let my crazy dog out of the crate, who has not stopped screaming for about an hour. And if I'm being honest, it's driving me insane. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope you guys do well on the NBA side or the NFL side, whichever thing you're up to today. Tomorrow, we're back. Very different schedule tomorrow. Be aware. Tomorrow is not like any other day. We are not going to have shows at the same time. I believe that the strategy show will still be at 9 o'clock tomorrow. But because of the holiday, we've got a noon start tomorrow for Mavs Hornets. We've got Pistons Rockets at 2, Timberwolves Grizzlies at 2:30, Hawks and Knicks at 3, Suns and Cavs at 3:30, Celtics Warriors at 5, then Jazz Pels at 8, Bulls Clippers at 10:30. I think that Greg and probably Eric are going to do live before lock. I'm guessing at like 1 o'clock. There's no deeper dive tomorrow. There's not the late show tomorrow. I'll do a strategy show at like 9. And then I think you're going to be getting live before lock. Assuming the slate locks at 2 for Pistons Rockets, you'll get live before lock from 1 to 2. So pay attention to the schedule for tomorrow. Good luck.